What I'm about to reveal will either destroy you or make you extraordinary. Carl Jung discovered something so dangerous about human consciousness that he kept it hidden in his private notes for decades. It's about people who see everything others misunderstand, why this gift systematically destroys their lives. If you've ever walked into a room and instantly felt the hidden tensions, if you can spot lies the moment someone speaks, if you see through social masks that fool everyone else, if people feel exposed around you and you can't figure out why, he might be one of the 1%. Jung identified as having the most dangerous psychological ability known to science. Jung called it differentiated perception, the curse of seeing unconscious patterns, hidden emotions, and psychological truths that remain invisible to 99% of humanity. But here's the terrifying part. Jung documented that people with this ability either end up completely isolated, psychologically destroyed, or they transform into something society desperately needs but isn't ready for. Today, I'm going to reveal Jung's most classified discovery about why seeing everything will either break you completely or turn you into a consciousness pioneer who changes the world. But first, you need to know which type of dangerous perceiver you are. The patient who saw too much. In 1913, during Jung's darkest period following his explosive break with Freud, a mysterious patient walked into his office. She would change everything Jung thought he knew about human consciousness, and reveal a psychological ability so dangerous that Jung initially refused to publish his findings. This wasn't just any patient. She represented what Jung would later classify as the rarest personality type on Earth, the introverted intuitive with undifferentiated perception. In his private notes, Jung wrote something chilling. The patient displays an extraordinary capacity for perceiving unconscious contents in others, but this faculty appears to cause her considerable distress rather than advantage. Here's what she could do that made Jung's blood run cold. She walked into any room and immediately sensed the complete psychological atmosphere. Who was lying? Instantly detected. Who harbored secret resentments? Felt it like a physical presence. Who was in emotional pain behind their smile? She absorbed it into her own body. But this supernatural ability came with a price that nearly destroyed her. She couldn't engage in small talk because she saw through every social facade. She couldn't maintain friendships because people felt uncomfortably exposed around her, as if she was reading their private diary. She couldn't hold employment because her mere presence disrupted what Jung called collective unconscious agreements, the shared illusions that keep groups functioning. Jung realized he wasn't treating mental illness, he was observing what happens when consciousness becomes too advanced for social survival. In his clinical notes, Jung documented something that should terrify anyone with similar abilities. She speaks of others as if she has access to their private thoughts and hidden motivations. When I verify her observations through careful questioning, they prove remarkably accurate. This wasn't psychosis or delusion. This was consciousness so advanced it had become socially dangerous. But Jung discovered something even more disturbing. This patient's extraordinary perception seemed impossible to explain through conventional psychology. So Jung began investigating what he termed participation mystique, a psychological phenomenon where individuals with highly differentiated intuition become overwhelmed by unconscious contents from others. The horror of absorption, Jung wrote in his Red Book period notes. There are those among us whose psychic apparatus is so finely tuned that they absorb not merely conscious communications, but the entire unconscious atmosphere of their environment. Think about the implications. You're not just seeing what others feel, you're living what others feel. You're carrying their unexpressed emotions, their hidden fears, their buried trauma. Your own identity starts dissolving under the weight of everyone else's psychological contents. Modern research by Dr. Elaine Aron validates Jung's early observations. Roughly 20% of people have heightened sensitivity, but Jung identified something far more specific and dangerous. Introverted intuitives comprising roughly 1% of the population who don't just feel deeply, they perceive unconscious patterns with startling, devastating clarity. Here's what Jung discovered about differentiated intuitive function. Their brains process not just obvious social cues, but unconscious emotional states, repressed content, and psychological patterns that remain completely invisible to others. They see the depression behind forced smiles. They sense desperation beneath confident presentations. They feel the collective shadow that groups unconsciously agree to ignore. Jung wrote something that should shake you. The danger lies not in the perception itself, but in the psychic isolation it creates. When one sees clearly what others cannot or will not see, one becomes a mirror that society cannot bear to look into. This creates what Jung called the problem of the superior function. When your greatest psychological strength becomes your greatest burden because it separates you from normal human connection. But here's where Jung's discovery becomes truly dangerous. People with highly differentiated perception don't just become isolated, they become targets. Jung extensively documented shadow projection where people unconsciously attack clear perceivers for reflecting what they refuse to acknowledge in themselves. His patient experienced this constantly. When she gently suggested someone seemed troubled, they'd explode at her for being negative. When she expressed concern about obvious problems, she'd be accused of manufacturing drama where none existed. Jung realized this wasn't coincidence. It was psychological warfare. In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, he wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to understanding ourselves. But for most people, it's easier to attack the person reflecting their shadow than examine what's being reflected." The question that will haunt you. If you recognize yourself in this description, you're not just dealing with social awkwardness. You're dealing with a psychological ability that makes you a target for unconscious collective defense mechanisms. The 4 types of dangerous perception. Jung's research revealed something that will either terrify or liberate you. There aren't just sensitive people. There are 4 distinct types of dangerous perceivers, each processing unconscious reality in radically different ways. Identifying your specific type is crucial because each one faces unique threats and unique transformation possibilities. The feeling intuitive, the emotional sponge. These individuals combine introverted intuition with what Jung called differentiated feeling function. They don't just see what's happening psychologically. They feel it in their own bodies with devastating intensity. Jung wrote, "The feeling intuitive lives in a state of perpetual emotional contagion, experiencing the unlived emotions of everyone in their environment. If you're this type, you absorb others' emotions so completely you can't distinguish between your feelings and theirs. You walk into a room and suddenly feel inexplicably anxious only to discover later that someone there was having a panic attack. You interact with a happy person and leave feeling depressed because you absorb their hidden despair." The danger: complete emotional overwhelm and identity dissolution. You become a repository for everyone else's unexpressed feelings, while losing contact with your own authentic emotional reality. The thinking intuitive, the pattern prophet. These individuals see psychological patterns and predict behavioral outcomes with terrifying accuracy. Jung observed they could forecast relationship failures, career disasters, and personal breakdowns months before they occurred, not through logical analysis, but through unconscious pattern recognition. Jung noted, they possess an uncanny ability to perceive the logical conclusions of unconscious processes that others cannot yet see. If you're this type, you see the inevitable endings. Before stories begin, you watch people make decisions and instantly know where those choices lead. You see the psychological trajectories that determine life outcomes, while others remain completely blind too. These patterns. The danger: becoming a prophet without honor in your own time. People reject your insights until after the predicted disasters occur, then blame you for creating negative energy, instead of recognizing your accuracy. The sensation intuitive, the body scanner. Jung documented patients who could sense physical manifestations of psychological states in others, detecting illness before symptoms appeared, sensing fatigue before it was acknowledged, feeling bodily tension that indicated emotional distress. Jung wrote, "These individuals serve as early warning systems for psychological and physical disease in their environment." If you're this type, you feel others' bodies as if they were your own. You sense their health issues, their physical stress, their energetic blocks. You might feel sudden neck pain when talking to someone who's carrying emotional burden in their shoulders, or experience stomach issues around people with digestive problems. The danger: physical overwhelm from absorbing others' bodily states. Your own health becomes compromised by constantly processing other people's physical and energetic information. Type 4. The pure intuitive, the overwhelmed oracle. The rarest and most dangerous type Jung encountered combined introverted intuition with what he called undifferentiated auxiliary function. They see everything but lack psychological structure to process their perceptions coherently. Jung observed, they live in a state of perpetual overwhelm, receiving vast amounts of unconscious information without adequate psychological structure to process it constructively. If you're this type, you're flooded with insights, impressions, and perceptions that you struggle to organize or communicate. You see layers upon layers of meaning, pattern, and significance, but can't filter or focus your awareness. Every interaction becomes an avalanche of information. The danger: complete psychological fragmentation from information overload. Without proper integration techniques, pure intuitives often develop severe anxiety, depression, or dissociative symptoms. The integration, understanding your specific pattern is crucial, because each type requires different approaches to what Jung called the integration challenge. But here's what Jung discovered that changes everything. The people who successfully integrate these abilities don't become normal, they become extraordinary. Jung studied historical figures too. Understand the difference between successful integration and psychological breakdown. The individuals who learned to consciously work with their dangerous perception became consciousness pioneers, people who helped humanity evolve psychologically. But those who remained unconscious of their gifts either withdrew from society completely or were systematically destroyed by the very people they tried to help. The terrifying truth: your dangerous perception will either isolate and exhaust you completely, or it will transform you into exactly what human consciousness evolution requires. There's no middle ground. Which type are you? And more importantly, are you ready to learn Jung's secret integration method that turns dangerous perception into conscious power? Chapter 3: Why Society Attacks Clear Perceivers, 700 Words. Here's the most disturbing truth Jung discovered. People with dangerous perception don't just face social awkwardness or misunderstanding. They face systematic psychological warfare from the very people they're trying to help. And most clear perceivers never understand why this happens until it destroys them. Jung called it shadow projection, and it's the reason why your gifts feel more like a curse than a blessing. The scapegoat, Minnow, documented this pattern repeatedly. Highly perceptive individuals become the designated problem in every group they enter, not because they cause problems, but because they reveal problems that already exist in the collective unconscious. Jung observed, the bearer of superior perception becomes the repository for all that the group cannot consciously acknowledge about itself. Here's how it works. When your clear perception reflects someone's unconscious contents, their hidden fears, repressed anger, secret shame, their psyche has only two options: integrate the shadow or attack the mirror. Guess which one most people choose? Jung wrote in Psychology of the Unconscious, nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on their environment than the unlived life of the parent. But he discovered this principle extended to all relationships. When someone's shadow is reflected back through your clear perception, the unconscious mind activates powerful defense mechanisms. The projection attack cycle. Stage 1. The reflection. Your perception accurately identifies unconscious contents in another person, their hidden depression, repressed anger, secret fears. Stage 2. The trigger. Their unconscious mind recognizes the accuracy, but cannot consciously acknowledge it. Stage 3. The projection. They unconsciously project their own shadow contents onto you, making you the carrier of what they refuse to own. Stage 4. The attack. They attack you for being negative, creating drama, or manufacturing problems where none exist. Stage 5. The isolation. The group unconsciously collaborates to exclude you, protecting their shared illusions from your dangerous clarity. Realize this wasn't personal persecution. It was psychological defense at the collective level. Real-world examples of shadow project or new gently mention that someone seems troubled, gives they explode. You're always so negative. Why do you create problems? You express concern about obvious dysfunction, gives they respond. You're being judgmental. Nothing's wrong here. You sense hidden tension in a group, gives everyone turns against you. You're the one causing drama. You accurately predict relationship problems, gives when it happens. They blame you. Your negativity caused this. Jung's chilling insight. The person who sees clearly gets blamed for creating the problems they're merely observing. The collective unconscious conspiracy. But Jung discovered something even more disturbing. This isn't just individual defensiveness, it's collective unconscious coordination. Groups unconsciously organize to protect their shared illusions from dangerous perception. Jung wrote, The individual who perceives too clearly threatens the collective agreements upon which social cohesion depends. When someone sees through the shared illusions that hold groups together, they become a destabilizing force. Organizations, families, and societies function partly through collective unconscious agreements about what will and won't be acknowledged. The highly perceptive individual inadvertently violates these agreements simply by existing authentically. The mirror that society cannot bear. Here's why your perception feels so socially dangerous. You serve as a mirror, reflecting what others refuse to see about themselves and their situations. But most people would rather shatter the mirror than examine what it's showing them, Jung observed. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to understanding ourselves. But for most people, it's easier to attack the person reflecting their shadow than examine what's being reflected. This creates what Jung called the scapegoat phenomenon. You become the problem that needs to be eliminated rather than the messenger revealing important truths. The psychological violence, the attacks on clear perceivers, aren't just social rejection. Jung documented systematic psychological violence, gaslighting, manipulation, character assassination, and coordinated exclusion campaigns. Why? Because your perception threatens the unconscious power structures that keep dysfunction in place. When you see clearly, you threaten everyone who benefits from others remaining unconscious. The devastating result: most clear perceivers eventually conclude they must be the problem. They start suppressing their perception, doubting their insights, and trying desperately to fit in with collective unconsciousness. Jung called this the sacrifice of perception to belonging, and he considered it one of the greatest tragedies in human psychological development. But here's what Jung discovered that changes everything. The attacks on your perception aren't evidence that you're wrong. They are evidence that you're accurately reflecting unconscious contents that others aren't ready to integrate. The question isn't whether you should suppress your dangerous perception to avoid social attack. The question is whether you're ready to learn Jung's integration methods that transform you from victim of projection into conscious warrior for truth. Jung single quotes a secret integration method. Breakthrough moment. After documenting the devastating effects of unintegrated dangerous perception, Jung developed something revolutionary: a systematic method for transforming your curse into conscious power. This isn't about suppressing your abilities or learning to fit in. This is about becoming psychologically bulletproof while serving consciousness evolution. Jung called it the individuation process, and it's the difference between being destroyed by your gifts and becoming exactly what humanity needs for its psychological development: conscious discrimination. The first breakthrough involves learning to distinguish between your authentic inner experience and unconsciously absorbed external content. Jung called this conscious discrimination, the ability to recognize when you're carrying psychological material that isn't your own. Jung wrote, "The first task is to establish what belongs to you and what belongs to others. Without this discrimination, there can be no individual development." The daily separation practice. Spend time in complete solitude daily, allowing absorbed material to settle so you can recognize your own authentic psychological voice. Jung instructed patients to sit quietly and mentally return emotions, thoughts, and sensations that didn't originate from their own experience. Key recognition signs: sudden mood changes after interacting with specific people, physical sensations that appear without personal cause, emotional reactions that don't match your actual circumstances, thoughts or concerns that feel foreign to your natural mental patterns. Shadow integration. Jung's most dangerous discovery. People who see others' shadows clearly often do so because they haven't integrated their own. The more you deny your own capacity for deception, selfishness, or cruelty, the more disturbed you'll be by seeing these qualities in others. Jung wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to understanding ourselves, but only if we have the courage to look inward rather than remaining focused outward." The shadow integration protocol. Step 1. Acknowledge your own darkness. Every quality you observe in others exists within you. This doesn't make you bad, it makes you complete. Step 2. Embrace your human contradictions. You contain capacity for both love and hatred, generosity and selfishness, truth and deception. Denying this creates the very projections that make others' shadows so disturbing to perceive. Step 3. Practice conscious choice. Once you own your shadow, you can choose how to express these qualities constructively rather than being unconsciously possessed by them. Jung observed, "The gold is in the shadow. Your rejected qualities contain tremendous creative and psychological energy when integrated consciously." Psychological container development. The final phase involves developing what Jung called psychological containers, the ability to hold others' unconscious contents temporarily while maintaining awareness that they are not your own. Jung wrote, "The individuated person can serve as a bridge between conscious and unconscious, helping to make the unconscious conscious in others without sacrificing their own psychological integrity." Container development techniques. Conscious witnessing. Practice observing others' psychological states with compassion rather than absorption. You can see their pain without taking it on as your own. Energetic boundaries. Learn to consciously close your perceptive abilities when you need protection. Jung taught patients to visualize psychological shields or protective barriers. Strategic engagement. Choose when and with whom to engage your full perceptive abilities. Not every situation requires your complete consciousness. Regular clearing. Develop rituals for releasing absorbed material. Meditation, creative expression, physical movement, or time in nature. The transformation stages. Stage 1. Recognition without overwhelm. You learn to acknowledge your perceptive abilities without being crushed by them. Jung called this conscious acceptance of the superior function. Stage 2. Integration without isolation. You learn to use your perception constructively while maintaining meaningful relationships. Jung called this social individuation, becoming authentically yourself while remaining connected to others. Stage 3. Service without sacrifice. Your perception becomes a gift you offer rather than a burden you carry. Jung called this conscious participation, using your abilities in service of others without depleting yourself. Stage 4. Legacy without attachment. You use your perception to contribute to collective consciousness evolution without attachment to whether others recognize your contributions. Jung called this the transcendent function, the ultimate integration. At the highest level of development, Jung observed that individuals with dangerous perception hold their abilities, lightly seeing clearly, without attachment to outcomes, accepting what they see, without compulsion to fix everything they observe. Jung called this the transcendent function, the ability to serve consciousness evolution naturally without forcing or preaching, simply by embodying more conscious ways of being. The promise: your dangerous perception isn't meant to isolate you from humanity. It's meant to prepare you to serve humanity's psychological evolution, but only if you learn to integrate it consciously, from dangerous perception to conscious power. The final revelation, Jung's most dangerous discovery, wasn't that some people see everything others miss. It's that most people with this ability never learn to use what they see wisely, and this represents one of the greatest losses in human psychological development. Jung's patient transformation. Remember Jung's patient from 1913, the introverted, intuitive who nearly destroyed herself with overwhelming perception. After 3 years of Jung's integration process, her life transformed completely. She learned to distinguish between her own psychological contents and what she absorbed from others. She found work as a counselor, where her differentiated perception helped troubled individuals heal. She built relationships with people who valued her insights rather than fearing them. Most importantly, she stopped experiencing her superior perception as a curse and began understanding it as what Jung called a gift requiring conscious development. Jung wrote about her transformation. The patient learned not to see less, but to see more wisely, not to perceive less deeply, but to engage more consciously with what she perceived. Her gift remained intact, but her relationship to it became integrated rather than overwhelming. The consciousness pioneer. Jung believed that individuals who successfully integrate dangerous perceptions serve a vital evolutionary function. They see what collective consciousness isn't yet ready to acknowledge, helping to prepare humanity for necessary developmental steps. Jung wrote, "What is not brought to consciousness comes to us as fate." Highly perceptive individuals who learn integration help make unconscious contents conscious before they manifest destructively in collective behavior. You're not just dealing with a personal psychological challenge, you're part of consciousness evolution itself. The 4 stages of transformation. Stage 1. From victim to warrior. You stop being destroyed by shadow projections and start recognizing them as information about others' unconscious development needs. You become psychologically bulletproof while maintaining compassion. Stage 2. From isolation to strategic connection, you learn to identify the few who can engage with your perception without defensiveness. Jung called these fellow individuated persons and natural containers, people capable of witnessing authenticity without threat. Stage 3. From overwhelm to conscious service. Your perception becomes a tool for healing and consciousness development, rather than a burden of overwhelming information. You learn when to engage fully and when to protect your energy. Stage 4. From personal struggle to cultural medicine, you understand that your integrated perception serves collective psychological evolution. Your personal healing becomes a contribution to humanity's consciousness development. Finding your tribe. Jung identified 3 essential types of relationships for dangerous perceivers: fellow individuated persons, people who have completed their own integration process. Jung wrote, "The individuated person recognizes another individuated person immediately." Active individuators, people engaged in serious inner work who can handle clear perception without defensiveness. Natural containers, mature individuals, with stable psychology who can witness deep truth without being overwhelmed. The integration indicators, you know your integration is working when you can see clearly without emotional overwhelm. Others feel safe being authentic around you, rather than exposed. You attract people ready for consciousness development, rather than those who attack clear perception. Your insights help others heal rather than triggering defensive reactions. You maintain your own psychological boundaries while serving others' growth, the evolutionary purpose. Jung's ultimate insight. Dangerous perceivers aren't psychological misfits. They're consciousness evolution's advanced scouts, preparing humanity for psychological development that's inevitable but not yet obvious. Jung wrote, in The Undiscovered Self, "The individual has always been the carrier of the living spirit, the one who brings about change in society. Your perception isn't an accident. It's an evolutionary necessity, the choice that determines everything." Jung's research revealed that dangerous perception creates an unavoidable choice: conscious integration or psychological destruction. There's no middle ground. The individuals who learn integration become what Jung called culture carriers, people who help consciousness evolve by embodying more conscious ways of being. Those who remain unconscious of their gifts either withdraw completely from social engagement or are systematically broken by the very people they try to help. The final challenge: your dangerous perception isn't your burden. Your unconscious relationship to your perception is your burden. Jung's integration method offers the path from psychological curse to evolutionary contribution, from overwhelming isolation to conscious service, from being destroyed by your gifts to becoming exactly what humanity needs for its next developmental stage. You were born to see everything, not to suffer in silence, but to serve consciousness evolution. The world needs your insights, but it needs them delivered with the integration, wisdom, and strategic awareness that transform dangerous perception into cultural medicine. The question isn't whether you should suppress your perception to fit in. The question is whether you're ready to develop the conscious relationship with your gifts that transforms you from victim of superior perception into consciousness pioneer. Your integration journey starts now. The future of human consciousness depends on people like you learning to use what they see wisely.